everyone. Welcome to this episode of Points on the Circle. It's a real special one today. I had a wonderful conversation with Eli Cole. Eli is in the non-for-profit consulting business. She has been a member with her family of Hakafa for about 5 years and has two wonderful daughters, Teddy, who's in sixth grade, and Charlotte, who's in fourth. Happy New Year to all of you, and enjoy the episode. Eli Cole, how you doing today?
I'm doing well, thank you. How are you?
Good. I am so excited about this that you actually said yes and give me the opportunity to do this with you. Makes
Of
me
course.
so incredibly happy because you are one of the people that you're, in terms of the people I admire in the world, you are so high up on that list. I hope you know that. I tell you that all the time.
Lovely. Thank you. Vice versa.
Oh,
So I
that's
will
why I
always say
said
yes. Yeah.
it. So how's everything been? How are the kids? How's life?
Well, my new answer to that question is that it's pandemic okay. It's like a new threshold of an answer to that question is
Yeah.
things are fine. But in the new scheme of things, things are just fine.
Yeah, they're crazy. They're nuts,
Right.
but in the scheme of things, right? I keep
Exactly.
telling
Yeah.
people that the house is burning, the country's burning, but I'm bringing marshmallows. We're having great s'mores,
Right,
right?
right, right. And in the scheme of everything happening to everyone else in the world, we are very lucky and there's
Yeah,
nothing to complain about.
yeah. So let's
Yeah,
jump just right into it if we can. You are a consultant for non-for-profits,
right.
right? And you have, and the work that you do is really well, you tell us the work that you do there briefly, if you could.
Sure. So consultant for social impact, it can be government, actually, government, foundation, nonprofits. And the work I do most frequently is to work across sectors to take on big ideas with high impact potential. So whether it's a group of organizations that are trying to take something on together, whether it is an entity like Chicago Public Schools or Chicago Department of Public Health, or right now I'm working for the state of Massachusetts that's trying to build public-private partnerships, just trying to kind of bring multiple entities together around a common problem to solve and get them going in the right direction around an initiative. So
What
that's
does
that's kind of the long and short of it.
what does the right direction mean?
The one that's going to get to the deepest impact for the most people possible, or sometimes it's environmental issues. So it's not always people, but to the greatest impact.
So what's it like? What's it like being an empath and being in this world in which you are pushing for social change and yet you see so much pain?
Well, it's a lot of feelings. I have always described myself as being really permeable because the things do just kind of go right through my skin. But at the same time, um, that sort of requires me to do the work because I couldn't turn away from it. Um, and I think over the years, I've developed more layers. I spent a long time working for the Chicago Rape Crisis Hotline, and of necessity, just developed a lot of layers through that, through answering calls in the middle of the night, in order to keep going through each day. And so that ended up, helping me develop the ability to walk into a room and then leave whatever is happening in that room there when I left and come home and be with my family and still have, a relatively happy life despite what was happening. But in the beginning of the pandemic, that didn't work so well for me. It was crushing anxiety every
Yeah.
day for days.
Crushing anxiety because you felt the world.
I felt the pain and the crisis around the immediacy of COVID that people were experiencing, but I felt like I could see ahead to what was going to happen to health and human service systems, to workforce development, to skyrocketing unemployment, and what was going to happen when eviction started, and just all of the kind of like domino effects that were going to ripple across so many populations and across so many systems, and sort of no end in sight for those, and just the cumulative nature of those for so many populations. And I didn't know I just kept saying, like, we need all the big brains on this. Like, somehow we've got to get all the
We
big
need any
brains.
big brain on
We
this.
need
Give me a big brain, please.
I know, because these were problems that we've not faced before, and we have to just keep solving them, no matter how tired we get.
But admittedly, this is a question, not a statement. The big problems that you perceived, and I would imagine we are just beginning to see your greatest fears being borne out. We're trying to
Mm-hmm.
drag it out as long as possible. But the system we're in was leading to that, whether or not we had a COVID.
Yes,
Would you? That's a
yes,
question, not a statement. Speak to that.
I definitely agree that there was there was this divide. The divide has been growing and growing incrementally, and I think what COVID did is it illuminated the chasm, and then it deepened it. But it made it go fast enough that it flashed onto people's screens in a way that they weren't literally the screens, because we were all in our homes bound to the screens,
Yeah.
but in a way that we didn't, many people had not kind of plugged into before.
Hmm.
But yes, I agree that they're all pre-existing conditions built into how the structures of our society work.
It's amazing when we have enough things to distract us from our anxieties that we can actually pretend that it's not coming down the pipe. And then when we no longer have those distractions, it's like, oh no, what next? Ah!
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
We're like in the
Absolutely.
munch. We're like in the munch, the scream, right? It's like
Yeah,
we're
I know.
now living the scream.
Like, ah.
You're beautiful. I hope we
The
capture that. I wish I would have
silence
had a
of it,
scream shade
right?
for the save for that. That's beautiful. That was so beautiful. Um, so I love the fact that you help the kinds of spaces that you occupy those spaces. And I have had a growing cynicism about non-for-profits that I need you to be my
Mhm.
therapist.
Yeah.
And here's where I need your therapy, unless you can tell me I'm right, which will really make it worse. And that is two things. Doing a lot of work on the border. And then all of a sudden, once it got in the news, seeing all these non-for-profits jumping on board because they found that that was a place to get visibility and raise dollars off the backs of people,
Mhm.
asylum seekers, I became
Yeah.
really cynical about the nonprofit industrial complex. So
Yeah. Yeah.
that's the first part about it. Not that I'm trying to do all the talking. And the second
That's
part
good.
is when I was down on the border, I also had this realization that for all the work that the non-for-profit world does, it lets the government off the hook.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so what we are doing is allowing the government to absolve itself of the responsibility that it should be having. So can you kind of
Interesting.
talk about both of
Yeah.
those, react to both of those? Tell me I'm nuts.
Yeah. I think there is some truth in that. I don't think it's universal, but I think there's some truth in that. And I think part of it is how the whole structure is set up. So you think about, when I think about nonprofits and philanthropy in particular, and how wealth was created in our country. And so you've got like Rockefellers, and you've got all of the the famous families, and then there are the foundations that are created from that wealth. Um, and now there's this situation where nonprofits usually make most of their money by pursuing that foundation funding. And all of it ends up being part of this kind of cycle that really just replicates similar power structures that have always been in place, which is to say that the wealth creation that fed the privilege of some for so many generations, but excluded that privilege for others, now fuels the helping of those others, that has been generations in the making. And it doesn't go to the root of the problems that have created the need for all of these
Mm.
services. It just continues to band-aid and patch at the wounds. And and so I think there is, when you say the nonprofit industrial complex, I think that's true of a lot of the structures that are part of this sector. Um, and aren't I don't necessarily look to individual nonprofit A and say, you are, you've done a bad. I more think of like how they've all kind of been groomed to be participants in this system of um, begging for your next dollar, using the song that's recognizable to those who have the dollar to pay, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I think there are some extraordinary leaders and movements, and some of them are nonprofits, some of them aren't categorized as nonprofits, some are in government, some are, doing work under other designations, but that are really trying to go upstream and get to the roots of problems and create systems change, which is the kind of change that I like to work with. Go ahead.
So let me jump on that for a moment, and
Yeah.
this might get us into an uncomfortable space, and I kind of hope so.
Okay.
And that is, so I was thinking about, you're right, putting Band-Aids on wounds that have been bleeding and bleeding and bleeding. We only have 12 pints of blood, and some folks have already lost 10 of them, right? And so when folks who have lost so much blood, literally, in our society, I want to talk about, what happened in June and July, and that is seeing communities of color, right, taking to the streets again.
Yeah.
And that some of that took place, some of the looting and the anger, right? And my reaction to that is, and if people watch this, they're going to get some pushback on this. I cannot condemn the looting. I don't condone it.
Yeah.
But I can't condemn it, because people are sick and tired of Band-Aids on wounds. And the only way wounds get stitched is if people feel that this is real. Give me your thoughts about that. I'm not quite articulating it right. And again, all I'm saying is that I can understand it. I'm not rooting for it.
Of course. Yeah.
Speak to that, will you?
Yeah, I am on the same boat as you. I actually I don't feel it's my place to have a position on looting that comes about as part of or in association with or next to protest in that way. And I don't condemn it. I also don't, a lot of people around me suggest that the Black Lives Matter leadership should be condemning it or speaking out against it. And I don't think that that's appropriate either. I don't think that's their job, and I don't think that they have to do that. I think there's a phenomenal, I really need to look up the name of the woman who made this speech so that we can credit her appropriately. I don't know if that can be added on later, but she gives a phenomenal sort of explanation using Monopoly.
I saw it. No, yeah, it was great.
Yes.
Oh yeah, it was great. Yeah.
It is, I think, the best critique of why both protest and anger or looting or stealing are appropriate responses to these generational issues.
And appropriate is such a hard word to use, because you know what it comes off as? We're a bunch of limousine liberal snowflakes that don't have any sense of right and wrong. As you're saying that, I'm thinking that about myself as well, right?
Interesting.
Right. So
Interesting.
I cut you off. Keep going.
Yeah, no, I hear you. And I actually, I can be really hard in other ways, but I actually, in this one, I think, I'm not saying that it's right. And I'm not saying that it should be just like hands off, go ahead. But I don't think that it's necessarily, I don't think that there's like, that there's some box I get to go stand on and talk about it. Like, I haven't earned any kind of place to stand up and have some kind of position on it, because, and what this woman says in her speech is like, we haven't owned anything. Like, we have not been allowed to own anything. And second of all, I think it was Trevor Noah who said this originally, that there is this contract that you have in America, which is that when something is stolen, you call the police and they come and they make things right. It's returned, or it's like there's punishment, whatever. And what's happening right now is that the police are coming and killing Black people. And so the contract's broken.
Mhm.
And so if the contract is broken and you haven't been allowed to own anything, then can you really blame a reaction among some people, which is to steal or to loot?
Well, yes, because it's the law, it's the law, and why should we hold them up to the law? Isn't it racist to say that they don't have to hold up to the same standards we do?
Yeah, and I'm not saying that the law
I'm not saying I
shouldn't be
agree, but that's
used. Yes, I hear you. And I'm not actually saying that the law should like overlook what's happening. You know, if they're caught, I think they go through the same process as long as there's not unequal sort of distribution of the law. And as long as the law isn't being, there aren't kind of inequities in how the law is applied as there were with drug laws for so many years, et cetera. And so I'm not sort of saying like, you're off the hook, everything's fine. But at the same time, I don't think this is sort of a moment for everyone to go make a bunch of speeches about and positions on that. And I think it's taking away from this extraordinary mobilizing that's just continued across the country and is way bigger.
Yeah, the knee-jerk reaction of yes, this is good, no, this is bad, no matter which way you take it, is really does a complete injustice to a history. Oh, they can come in and say hi. Let her come say hi. Who is
You want
it?
to come? Do you want to say hi, honey? I'm. This is recording. It's a podcast.
Oh, say hi to me. Come say hi to me.
She can't hear
Okay,
you.
I know she's in your. I know that's okay. So, just so you know, one of her daughters is homeschooling right now, and is coming to talk to her. Now I can say hi. Hey, you. How are you?
I accidentally missed SEL in school.
Okay, that's probably okay, honey. It sounds like you're out of school now, right?
That's okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Good. It's good to see you.
You go play outside or something, honey.
Okay, I was just about to jump on the trampoline.
Okay, have fun. I'll be done in a little bit.
Okay.
Come a little farther because now the sun's back. There you go. Thanks. So, you know, so a deeper analysis needs to be made about this, right? And you want to put your ears back in? Go ahead. Are you there?
Yes.
Good. And my reaction was a system that's inherently that's been unfair to a group of people that then says you can protest as long as you protest in the way we say it's okay, as long as you don't make us uncomfortable, completely defeats the whole kind of basis of it.
It's like the tone policing. You do things in a certain way, and
So
that's the way that's acceptable.
One of the reasons why I adore you so much is because I feel like you've got such a healthy balance between head, heart, and soul. And I think that, and I think, right, and I think that you care about all three of those.
Yeah.
So other than being able to compartmentalize, as you said, the work that you do enables you to develop layers. Where do you find spirit in all this?
It's interesting. I was just saying the other day, I don't think I have since March. I've felt very like disconnected spiritually. It's been hard to sort of find a spiritual connection, in part because the compartmentalization required to sort of survive through, I think, what we're all sort of facing right now, just hasn't allowed that to peek through. And I'm very driven by my work. I feel very, that is definitely my kind of mission and my gut around like what's there in the world. I enact every day through my work is trying to make things better and more fair and more just. And so I feel very fulfilled in that regard. And that is part of my spirituality, for sure. But there's a part of my spirituality that is also about music and about poetry and about nature and about beauty, and especially about being with other people in communion together. Yeah. And that's been pretty hard to come by. So I'll be honest, it's been pretty difficult to find that.
So if part of your spirit's about nature, yeah, how come you can't find it in COVID? Because isn't COVID nature?
So I have been about once or twice a week, I do a run down by the lake and see the sunrise, and I find it there. But one of my projects is for the state of Massachusetts, which is an hour behind us.
Hour
And so my
ahead.
Zoom calls are hour ahead. So my Zoom calls start at like 7 a.m. every morning. So I have to wake up
Mhm.
at like 4:30 to get that run. So I keep telling them like, you're crowding out my run time, my church or my synagogue. You keep crowding out my religion.
Yeah. But can you understand? So yeah, look, when I love nature. That's where I
Yeah.
have been so craving to go hiking, so craving. Just
Mm-hmm.
because the idea of just letting go and letting those layers loose and just letting everything just seep through the strength of the silence, right? Especially in desert for me.
Yes. Wow.
And yet,
Interesting.
and I also love it in the woods. And I mean,
Mm.
but as I've questioned a number of years on the high holidays and continue to push, and when you were in the adult B'nai Mitzvah class, I pushed this. When we say we go to nature to find spirit, COVID is nature.
Yeah.
So what we're saying is that when we go to nature,
Mm-hmm.
it's the nature that makes us feel good. And then is that really spirituality, or is it just self-righteous self-fulfillment? And I'm not calling you that. I'm just asking.
Interesting.
I'm
No, no,
asking
no,
the
yeah.
question.
No. Well, I think when I cite nature, I'm talking about like beauty in nature, just this awe of being in the natural world. But you're right that COVID is nature, and I think part of it is contrast, right? Like that nature gives us contrast, and contrast gives us gratitude and gives us an understanding of um, the spectrum of what could be.
Hmm.
And COVID is certainly part of that.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty amazing that something that's really so minuscule that flies through the air can
Yeah,
kill as many people as it has. That is, talk about
yeah,
awesome
and can
and
fill a
awful.
room, can fill a whole room, can fill
Yeah.
up. You know, it's incredible. I know.
So you talk about that space being the space where gratitude is found. Say more about that. I find that really fascinating.
I feel grateful, continually grateful. Um, my sister had COVID, but really mild case. Nobody that I know has really suffered from it, and I know I've been in work calls with people who have lost people, and so I know that it has really come for a lot of folks in some really awful ways, losing multiple family members, communities that have been struck, as we know, Black and Brown communities. And so the gratitude for me is just the extent to which we've been spared, that we had the ability to be able, I've been able to work from home since March.
Hmm.
Um, I'm grateful that my kids' schools have found a way to bring them back a day a week and 2 days a week starting next week, so they can balance a little bit of in person and togetherness. Like there's just so much. Like we are really the most privileged of the privileged in this moment, as you look at the experiences of people through a crisis like this.
Yeah. I sometimes
Yeah,
worry about gratitude. I'm sounding really
tell me.
negative about all the beautiful things you've been saying. Maybe it's the week that I'm in. I don't know, but I really don't mean it that way because I agree with you. It
It's
sounds so
okay.
horrible. Everything you're saying, I'm just ripping apart.
Like that is it do you worry about that it's like just this, that it's like gratitude not tied to action?
No, I feel as I'm listening to you, I want to feel that gratitude and the I don't want to say the pessimist in me, the Rona would call it the Lockmorts, the sour part of me is the one that says gratitude to me, I can't afford to have it. It's not fair to the people that you just talked about that we're not. Right. Is
Ah,
right. So
mm,
how can I have if my gratitude is on the backs of people, right? And
that it's
so
patronizing in some way.
it's not only patronizing, that's part of it,
Mm-hmm.
I think, but it's also it I don't want to build it off the backs of folks,
Right.
and you didn't say that. I reacted
Yeah.
that way because that's my
I know. I
reaction.
hear you.
And
Yeah.
that's thank God I'm
It's
not
like,
you.
no, no, no. It's like having gratitude without also recognizing like the extent to which so much of what's fueling that is unearned privilege,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That so much of my circumstances from unearned privilege rather than luck, right? It's not, I'm not lucky. I
Right.
didn't luck into anything.
What does
I just
gratitude look
described.
like? What does gratitude look like when you were born on third base?
Exactly. Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. Right.
And again, I'm not trying to kill what you said,
No, no, no.
Yeah.
No, and yeah, I hear you. And when I talk about the work calls I described, it's people of color on the calls who are talking about family members they've lost.
Yeah.
And it's definitely driven home for me, uh, a lot of the things that I've always kind of known, but you know, you're reminded in new ways in times like this.
Yeah.
You're reminded in a lot of new ways.
Do you feel like we're heading in the right direction ultimately? Not in the short term, but just as you're working to make the world better, as you're working to help organizations, as you're working for justice?
Um, I am a super, super big optimist. And um, and so I don't know how to not feel like in general we are going to get to the right place. But like one of the things I've been working on right now is childcare and watching that infrastructure crumble and knowing like childcare it's returned back to being a women's issue. And labor force participation of women is already dropping. And I'm just kind of imagining over the next decade how many women are going to be leaving the market, all the way to like the women that I work with in my firm. And many have kind of had to kind of fall off the map to be running their households. And so I'm looking at labor force participation of women. I'm looking at the Supreme Court and any number of other forces right now. And when Ruth Bader Ginsburg died, I sort of just started having this feeling of dread that in 2030 we're going to be looking back and saying that was the worst decade for women. I got pretty pessimistic for me when it came to women and my girls, and thinking about Roe v. Wade and any number of other things. That said, I really do believe that Democrats will win the next election, and we will be able to rebuild and stabilize and move more immediately in the right direction. I really do believe that is going to happen. And a lot of people don't, and I just don't see it.
I have two responses to that. And one is, again, the system needed to be shaken up.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that the way it's being shaken up is such an anathema to so many of us, and that immediate intensity of it is so overwhelming that we can't see that it was worth it, and we won't know for 10 years whether or not it was worth it.
Yeah.
And the other reaction I have is that this current time we're in is, this might sound Pollyannish, is that this time that we're in is proof that we are heading in the right direction because of the reaction of the folks who are holding on to power so desperately.
That's interesting. Yeah. Yeah. I just wish they weren't so successful at holding on to that power. Like they keeps working. But well, yes, I agree with you.
And so aggrieved people and desperate people do some pretty horrible things when they have the power to do that.
Yeah.
But you see this movement, just this energy pushing forward, like, wow. And it might not be before 2030. I hate to say that. I mean, but
it might not. It might not. It might not.
Yeah. So
I do feel like when it comes to anti-racism, I feel like we are on a really good path. Like I have a lot of optimism when it comes, like, I mean,
say more about that.
I feel like, I think the mobilization we've seen and the populations that we've seen getting behind the Black Lives Matter movement, when I look at my neighborhood and the signs all over my neighborhood, when I look at the people talking about it, when I look at just the breadth of the movement and its reach. And it wasn't like this when Laquan McDonald was shot. It wasn't like this in other eras and other times when very, very, very similar things were happening. And so things just feel different right now in a very positive way in terms of who cares and what they're doing about it. Yeah.
So not to reduce it, which means I'm about to reduce it. Have you felt the anti-Semitism on the left creeping in?
Yeah, that's worried me a lot.
Say more.
Um,
I don't want to quit. I don't want to make it that the left is all anti-Semitic, and I don't want to push the BLM as an anti-Semitic movement. I don't subscribe to that,
I
but
don't either.
yeah,
I don't either. It's something that that bothers me about the movement, but I have decided um, is less important than my overall support of of prioritizing the movement because the urgency is different. Um, and I will be honest, I haven't been I'm not up to date on what's happening there, but um, uh, I think the kinds of things that we've heard about on college campuses before COVID um, worry me in terms of like just how black and white things have become.
literally.
Yeah, yeah,
Mm.
yeah. There just doesn't feel like there's a lot of room all the time for nuance anymore. Um, and that's
So
hard. That makes it hard.
yeah, I mean, when was there room for nuance though? When has there been nuance?
Well, I do think I think there has been I think there's always this push towards um, sort of clarity and positions. If you think about like how the early women's movement really didn't accommodate the perspectives of women of color, and early civil rights movement didn't really accommodate women. There's certainly like this push towards like clarity of position, but I also think that um, the way that our media and our consumption of media happens today drives us towards polarization in a different way
Oh,
that doesn't
totally,
allow for nuance in the same way that it might
totally.
have in the past if we educated ourselves differently or kept
Yeah.
up to date differently.
Well, why nuance, right? If you're getting fed what feels good to you on a
Right.
continuous, nonstop
Yeah.
basis,
If the
right?
algorithms give it to you, in exactly the way you want it, why read more?
Yeah. And it feels good and it feels right, and you feel like you are in the right, right?
And everybody in your feed agrees with you. Therefore, why keep reading?
Yeah,
I don't know.
and I've been telling people for a long time, if everyone just agreed with me, everything would be okay, right? And the problem is that we all believe that, not about
Yeah.
me, but about ourselves, right? And we're able to
Hmm.
find that space.
Yeah.
Huge leap, but not this within this space. Do you believe in God?
Hmm. I do.
Say more.
Um, it's just something I've always felt. It's not from the head, it's just from the heart. I've always felt a presence.
Is that presence interactive?
Hmm.
Then why are they allowing this to happen?
Because it's a part of love to allow this to happen.
Whoa. What do you mean by that?
um,
Whoa.
I think part of um, part of loving us and loving the earth is allowing us to destroy it or allowing it to follow the path that it's going to take, or that we divine for it or devise for it.
Why is that love?
Well, if my daughter um, if my daughter is going down this self-destructive path, I might I might wish for her to go in a different direction, or I might provide guidance, or um, I might intervene to some degree, but I can't ultimately stop that and still love her and still allow her to have the agency and the personhood that she's owed.
Does God intervene? And should God intervene?
That's where I don't know. I don't, I mean, I don't, I don't really think so. I kind of think of, I kind of think of God as a pretty, like, I think of God as being everywhere, um, and a part of us, like intervening through us, but not actively. It's on us.
Hmm.
And we talked in our class about the breath of God coming through our speech and our breathing, and that when we are in the presence of others, we are sharing God through breathing in together, and that's how I think of God. And so when we intervene, maybe that's God enacting or intervening through us, but it's really our agency, I think, that's driving it.
If you could see that divine intervening in some way from on high, what way would you like to see her intervene?
I don't think I would. I think we will be better off if we do it ourselves.
Hmm. Even as we have moments where it appears to be destructive.
Mm-hmm.
What does peace look like to you?
I mean, I should contextualize these responses. Like, this is so weird. We can talk about these things.
I don't know. I didn't know. I told you I had no idea where we're going with this. I'm reacting to you.
I'm not sure it's a terrible thing. I don't want us to destroy the earth, and I don't want the world to end, and I don't want to die, and I don't want my kids to die, and I don't like any of that. But I also don't think I think it's a part of nature that we will and we might, and those things are, can be beautiful too. And so I don't, um, if we are struck by a meteor or whatever happens, I don't think we stop um, being. I think we kind of, become part of whatever, like stardust, whatever. I don't know, whatever the physical thing is, doesn't matter. I think it's just that's the next thing that we're supposed to be. Um, so I wouldn't want an intervention that stops kind of the natural progression of life.
So what you're saying to me, because I asked you, what does peace look like to you? And so your reaction to me, what I just got out of that is that peace is our current state of being because we are what we are. And so it's a matter of humans being humans in the situation. That's what I heard you just say.
I think it's a matter, I think peace is humans, um, in my opinion, humans exercising their agency for collective good, for a collective good. Um, Humans exercising their agency for a collective good and making that choice more often than not.
And the problem is when we have different definitions of good, which is why what we learned in our class and
Yeah.
we talk about in Torah class all the time, the
Mm-hmm.
word in Hebrew for good, tov, actually means whole and complete in our
Yeah.
reading, which is the same word as shalom, which is wholeness and completeness. So there's a relationship between the two.
Yeah.
So, just a couple more minutes if I can have.
Yeah.
You've got two really free-spirited girls who are going to be
Yeah.
incredibly strong women in their own ways. Um, Talk to me about you mentioned 10 minutes ago, 5 minutes ago, that you're worried about their decade looking back.
Mm-hmm.
What does womanhood look like for them?
Um, well, I hope it looks, they're already more confident, more self-possessed, um, more interesting than I ever was at their age. And so I hope that womanhood continues to be just a continual discovery of who they are and what they like, and who they like, and what they want to do and be and become. And my aim is to counter the messages that come in for girls and young women from the rest of the world for as long as I can, to block and counter them for as long and as hard as I can, and to build their toolkit so that when they finally get through, they're not crushing. And so far,
have you been successful at that?
So far it's going pretty well. Yeah. So far it's going okay.
Because on one level, that means no television, no movies, no books, no radio, no podcast, only selected podcasts,
No, we're not that family.
I know that. So I know that's the case, but so how do you mitigate those messages in a world that everything is geared towards it and around it?
By first of all, building their confidence in themselves, but second of all, building their tools for critical analysis, so that when they're absorbing media, they're also analyzing it as it comes in and thinking about what it's saying about them and about gender and about other sort of situations in the world.
Have they confronted it amongst peers?
Yeah. I mean,
so Teddy's in 6th grade and Charlotte's in 4th grade?
Teddy's in 6th grade, and I'll tell you that in the Zoom meetings in the spring, the boys completely dominated. The girls couldn't get a word in. My sense is that they're being managed differently this fall, the online learning. But in the spring, I don't think she got to speak much.
And how did she
or
react
any of
to
the
that?
girls.
How did she react to that?
And there was, I'll tell you, I'll talk to you another time about.
Okay, that's fine. Not fair. Okay.
Yeah.
That's good. Good. My apologies.
Yeah, but no, it's okay. She did great. She did great with remote learning in the end.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
So, when the first time I came over, when I met you guys, and they took me into the room where you're now sitting, and Teddy gave me your business card. And I told Teddy that I was going to take it and tape it up on my wall. And when she became a bat mitzvah, or at one point when I can publicly make it, I'm giving it back to her, and I'm looking at it right now. It is sitting right there. It's taped up on my wall waiting. I don't care if it's bat mitzvah, confirmation, wedding, college graduation, PhD. I don't care. But, coming back overall, without getting personal, I can imagine navigating that space. As one who is in a lot of spaces with mostly women in a given week, and have had it finally starting to seep in. And it took me a long time. And I'm still, where I'm just starting to notice when there are 20 people in a Zoom room and 3 of them are men, and the men are doing the majority of talking, or the men are the ones who will just barge in and speak when they want. Right. All those
and
things.
Always respond to the question first. There's a question, it's always the male voice responding first. It's every meeting I'm in. It's fascinating how it translates into the technological, the online kind of meeting space.
Wow.
I know.
Okay, last question for you.
Yeah.
There's no COVID. Where's the first place you're going?
I don't know. It's funny how little I miss about that life. I don't miss restaurants. I don't miss so much. But we are separate from my parents right now because the kids are in school. So I think I'll probably go visit them in Michigan, and we'll spend some time together as a family.
Very nice.
Yeah.
You're so wonderful.
Vice versa. Thank you.
Is there anything I should have asked you that I didn't? Anything that I skipped around? Anything that I jumped in as a male and cut you off?
I mean, what did we not cover? My gosh. I don't know. What could we dig out from the recesses of my psyche?
Eli, I hope folks really watch this one because you are such a gift to the freaking world. You really are. And you're a gift. You are such a gift to me. And I've always told you that. And you always give me that look like, what's he talking about? But there's something about you that is just melting. And
Aw.
there is that honesty. There's just this honesty and this integrity and this strength that comes from you. And I'm not doing this to blow you to make you
No, I know. I know you don't do that.
so I want people to see this because I want people to engage you because we need you and we need your
Thank you.
words.
Thank
So
you.
with that, I'm going to say, we're between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. So I hope you have a fruitful, sweet new year.
Thank
And
you.
that this year moving forward is one of growth and moving towards that goal, whatever that goal might be. God willing.
Thank you. And you too. I appreciate it.
All right, everybody, that's it. And we'll see you next time. Take care. Shana Tova.
Shana Tova.